Node.js 26 is here, and this release actually brings features that change how we write JavaScript. Temporal is finally enabled by default, new math methods are landing, Iterator APIs are getting modernized, and several things developers rely on for years are finally being deprecated. So today, let's look at the Node.js 26 features that actually matter with real code examples. Let's start with what is probably the biggest feature in Node.js 26, Temporal. For decades, working with dates in JavaScript has honestly been painful. The classic date API has a lot of problems. Dates are mutable, times on handling is confusing, parsing can be inconsistent, and somehow months start at 0. Because of that, developers ended up relying on libraries like Moment.js, Luxon, or Date.js just to handle dates safely. But now, Temporal is finally enabled by default in Node.js 26, and it gives JavaScript a modern date API that is immutable, predictable, and designed with time zones in mind from the beginning. For example, here is something many developers have done before. This code adds 1 month to a date, but the important detail is that set month mutates the original object. So instead of returning a new date, it changes the existing one directly. In larger applications, this can easily create bugs because multiple parts of the app might be sharing the same date object without realizing it. And then there is this classic JavaScript moment. January is represented as 0, which means 0 is January, 1 is February, and so on. It's one of those small things that has confused JavaScript developers for years. Now compare that with Temporal. This API is immutable by default. Instead of modifying the original value, Temporal returns a completely new date. That makes the behavior much more predictable and easier to work with, especially in large applications. Temporal also improves one of the biggest problems in JavaScript dates, time zones. With the old date API, time zones behavior often depended on the local machines or implicit conventions, but now you can explicitly define the time zone directly in the object itself, which makes application much more reliable when working across regions and different users. Honestly, this is one of the most important improvements JavaScript has had in years, because dates have been a pain point since JavaScript has created in the 90s, and Node.js 26 finally brings a modern native solution directly into the platform. Another really interesting addition in Node.js 26 is the new Map.prototype.getOrInsert method. And honestly, this is one of those features that looks small at first, but JavaScript developers write this kind of logic all the time, especially when working with caching, grouping data, memorization, or collections. So before Node.js 26, this was the common part. First, you check if the key already exists. If it doesn't, you initialize the value manually. Then finally, you access the value again to update it. And honestly, this is boilerplate with all written many times. Now with getOrInsert, all of that becomes a single operation. If the key already exists, it returns the existing value. And if it doesn't exist, it inserts the default value automatically, which makes the code much cleaner and easier to read. Again, this might seem like a tiny feature, but these are exactly the kind of improvements that modernize everyday JavaScript development. Less boilerplate, cleaner collection handling, and fewer repetitive patterns. Node.js 26 also continues modernizing JavaScript iterators with Iterator Helpers, and this is a really important step because it brings a more functional and memory-efficient way of working with data pipelines. Normally in JavaScript, when we chain methods like map and filter on arrays, each operation creates intermediate array in memory. But Iterator Helpers work lazily instead, which means values are processed only when they are actually needed. This is the traditional approach most developers use today, and while it looks clean, every step in the chain creates a new intermediate array internally. For small datasets, that's usually fine, but when working with large streams of data, this can become inefficient in terms of memory usage. Now, with Iterator Helpers, operations are evaluated lazily. Instead of generating intermediate array at every step, values flow through the pipeline only when needed, which makes the approach much more efficient for larger datasets, streams, or complex transformations. Another important part of Node.js 26 is the continued evolution of the native fetch API through Undici 8, and this is part of the much bigger threat. Node.js keeps moving closer on the web platform. A few years ago, making HTTP requests in Node.js almost always meant installing external libraries like Axios, NodeFetch, or Request, but today, modern Node.js already ships with a native fetch API built directly in the runtime. For years, this was the standard approach. Install a third-party library, import it, and use it for HTTP requests, which were fine, but also meant depending on additional packages for something that browsers already supported natively. Now, this functionality is built directly into Node.js itself. No extra dependency, no additional package installation, just the standard fetch API developers already know from the browser. And under the hood, this is powered by Undici, the high-performance HTTP client maintained as part of the Node.js ecosystem. This is another example of how Node.js is becoming more standardized and more aligned with modern web APIs, which means less dependencies overhead, more consistency between front-end and back-end JavaScript, and a clearer developer experience overall. Node.js 26 also ships with V8 14.6, the JavaScript engine that powers Node.js and Google Chrome. And while engine updates might not sound very exciting at first, these updates can actually improve your performance of your applications even without changing your code. Because every new V8 releases brings optimizations to things like memory management, garbage collection, parsing, and JavaScript execution itself. For example, code like this might run faster in newer Node.js versions thanks to engine-level optimizations inside V8, even though the application code itself hasn't changed at all. And this is why keeping Node.js updated is important. You're not only getting new APIs, you're also getting years of improvements in the JavaScript engine underneath your applications. Node.js 26 is also continuing something really important for the ecosystem: platform cleanup. Over the years, Node.js accumulated APIs and behaviors that were deprecated a long time ago but still remain in the runtime for compatibility reasons. And in Node.js 26, several of those deprecated APIs are finally being removed or pushed closer to removal. If you've worked with older Node.js applications before, you've probably seen warnings like this in the terminal, and while many teams ignore them for years, this warning usually signals APIs that will eventually disappear from the platform. For example, older patterns like new buffer have been deprecated for years because they introduce security and reliability issues. Modern Node.js now encourages safer alternatives instead. And this is part of a much bigger threat. Node.js is continuously modernizing the platform and removing legacy patterns that no longer fit modern JavaScript development. Overall, Node.js 26 feels like another major step toward a cleaner and more modern JavaScript ecosystem. Temporal finally gives JavaScript a modern native data API. Iterator Helpers brings more efficient and functional data pipelines. New collection APIs reduce boilerplate, and the platform keeps moving closer to modern web standards. But honestly, the most interesting part is this. Node.js is no longer evolving only at the runtime level. It's actively changing how we write JavaScript itself. And remember, Node.js 26 is currently a current release, no LTS yet. So if you are planning to upgrade production systems, make sure to test your application properly before moving workloads into production. And let me know in the comments which Node.js 26 feature are you most excited about? Temporal, Iterator Helpers, the new Map APIs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.